Okay guys, watch this.
The impact that psilocybin has on the creation of language. And he thinks that the very pathways that you were discussing that psilocybin sort of empowers, that may very well have been how human beings started elaborating on language.
Oh, I think he's correct on that because glossary.
Okay, and this one.
If you have the mystical experience that's associated with psilocybin ingestion, you're liable to represent that to others and yourself as one of the 2 or 3 most important experiences of your entire life. So that would be at the same level as the birth of your child or your marriage, let's say. Assuming that those were transcendent experiences. But that's...
Okay guys, that is actually insane. That is a video of Joe Rogan talking about how mushrooms could very well have been the actual root of the creation of language. And that was Jordan Peterson saying that if you take psychedelic mushrooms, you are morally responsible to tell other people that that could have been one of the most important events of your entire life. Like, what? All right, guys, so let me tell you a quick little story. I was walking down the streets of Toronto a couple nights ago, and in about a 1-block radius, I noticed about 4 or 5 different stores selling magic mushrooms, which are still illegal in Canada, by the way. But this got the gears turning a little bit, and I've just been wondering, like, what am I missing here? What is the deal with these magic mushrooms? Why are they suddenly gaining so much popularity? And let me tell you guys, the more research I put into this drug, the more blown my mind is. So anyways, guys, my brain has been flooded with so many questions about this psychedelic drug. And honestly, the more research I do, the more questions I have. But I decided, you know what, I'm gonna make a little video about the research I found, and hopefully you guys find this topic as interesting as I do. And trust me, you will. So, what are we gonna cover in this video? Well, let me tell you. Number 1, what the heck are magic mushrooms and how the hell do they function in the human brain? Number 2, why is this drug illegal and should it be legal? Number 3, what are the potential benefits we could see from using this drug in the future? And number 4, if this drug has been around for thousands and thousands of years, then why do we know so little about it? Don't worry guys, I'm on the case. I'm gonna break it down. I'm gonna get your answers for you. Stick with me and let's take it away. All right guys, so let's start with how the hell this all works. So psilocybin is a naturally occurring hallucinogenic drug that is found on over 200 species of fungi. When ingested, this actually metabolizes into something called psilocin, and this is what creates the psychedelic activity in our brains. So what happens, this binds on to our serotonin receptors, specifically the 5-HT2A receptor. Because this drug has direct ties to our serotonin receptors, that could explain why users can feel overwhelming senses of euphoria, joy, energy, etc. Scientists also think that psilocybin helps parts of the brain communicate with each other. That's why you might have heard of people saying that actually taking the drug feels like it's rewiring their brain. Think of it like this. Your brain is like a computer, and taking this drug can rewire the operating system of this computer down to a basic code level, which can actually change someone's life going forward. But guys, this is nothing new. Scientists have been looking at the therapeutic benefits of psychedelics since the 1950s. So this is where it gets really interesting. Okay guys, psilocybin has been around for a very long time, and there's evidence that suggests that even 3,000 years ago, people were using psilocybin in religious and spiritual ceremonies. Psilocybin was also used by the Mayan and Aztec people, which is seen in their art and their sculptures. All right, now let's flash forward to the 1900s. There was no general concern surrounding psychedelic drugs. they were legal. You could have them, you could take them, they were available. Scientists were studying them, doctors were using them. There are even studies dating back to the 1950s where doctors and scientists were finding ways to treat certain psychiatric disorders with the help of psilocybin, including anxiety, depression, OCD, alcoholism. And then, my friends, came the 1960s. The 1960s, summer of love, love not war, hippie era, rock and roll, whatever you want to call it, however you want to remember it. You could say that maybe things got a little bit out of hand. With the counterculture in the 60s and hippie era, more and more people started to experiment with psychedelic drugs. The more and more that young people were getting their hands on these drugs, the more possibilities for negative outcomes. You see, guys, with any substance, negative consequences are always possible. Although there are so many people that have had positive, maybe even life-altering experiences on this drug, there's also a lot of people that have had really terrifying, bad experiences. So it's important to remember that with any substance, you're well educated, you're in a safe environment with people you trust, etc. The negative headlines and news stories surrounding LSD, mushrooms, and other psychedelic drugs created a lot of paranoia and mistrust in society, which ultimately led to the government declaring drugs as public enemy number one, or the war on drugs.
America's public enemy number one in the United States is drug abuse.
This is your brain on drugs.
Stop it. Get some help.
So the whole history of this drug, I find it just completely bizarre. Because although I understand that there could have been isolated, bad, or maybe even violent situations surrounding these drugs, it doesn't make sense for the government to make a law that directly conflicts with scientific evidence at the time that potentially psilocybin could treat citizens, could treat people struggling with anxiety, with PTSD, with depression. It just doesn't add up. It makes me question certain things. If the government really put these laws into place with health and safety concerns at its core, then why aren't there other laws surrounding substances that we know are harmful to society? Tobacco kills 400,000 people a year in the States alone. Alcoholism kills 100,000 people a year in the States alone. And I'm finding on the internet that psilocybin actually has potential to treat addiction with these substances and save lives. That just seems crazy to me. In the States right now, the consequences of having psychedelic drugs are more severe than possession of drugs like cocaine and morphine, which we know are highly addictive and, based on the evidence we have, more harmful than psychedelic drugs. All right, guys, I know what some of you might be thinking. Drugs are bad. Hey, I took the DARE program too. Look, I get it. All of what I'm saying right now might sound too good to be true. And maybe it is. I honestly don't know for sure. But just imagine for a second that this works. This could help people struggling with mental illness, with PTSD, with anxiety, with depression. How many people do you know that have depression? How many people do you know that have anxiety? Or maybe even people that just feel stuck. How many people do you know that are in a rut and that maybe could benefit from a rewiring of their brain? At the very least, guys, if this is something that can actually help people, I don't see anything wrong with putting more scientific research into this drug. And perhaps even debunking or deframing some of this fear and paranoia surrounding these drugs could also be beneficial to society as well. And in the past 10 years, we have done a lot of research and we know a lot more things about psychedelic drugs. According to the Johns Hopkins Center for Psychedelic Research, psilocybin treatment for depression can be effective for up to a year. Compared to standard antidepressants, which must be taken for long periods of time, psilocybin treatments can relieve symptoms of depression in only 1 or 2 treatments. Now, there's still a lot we don't know, but the more and more researchers are finding about psychedelic drugs, they are trying to imagine a world where we can incorporate them into our daily lives. This might look like a person coming in and being guided by a licensed professional. They'll make sure that the person is in a safe environment, is supervised, and has a good intended trip for that particular person's needs. There's a lot to unpack about this subject, and it seems like on the media, there are 2 sides of the spectrum. One side, which is very anti-drug, fear, paranoia, don't do it. And the other side, where this drug is the best thing in the world, it can save you, it's potentially one of the most important things you could ever do in your life. So, the goal is hopefully one day we'll find an even middle ground, but the only way to do that is through research, through educating yourself, and hopefully one day the government and science aligning on the same page. That could also be helpful. But anyways, let me know what you guys think. If you have any personal experiences about this subject or other thoughts and opinions, drop a comment, let me know, and peace out.